Moving on, obviously, we've got a fascinating interview with Sir Doug Ellis over here very shortly, and after that there's a presentation from Mace Director Richard Thorpe. There'll also be presentations to apprentices and ambassadors, as I mentioned to Mike earlier. Also, you may have noticed somebody coming around with a container to put your business cards in. Eventmasters.co.uk have kindly provided a couple of seats for the England-France Euro opener in June at the McDonald Burlington. Four-course meal. I think it's Razor Ruddock is presenting. We were talking about Steve Bull at one time. I don't know if Steve was confirmed. But then there's an evening meal as well, included with an overnight stay courtesy of McDonald Burlington Hotel. So that's worth winning, so make sure you put your cards in that container, ladies and gentlemen. Right, first up, a really special guest we've got today, and honoured to have this gentleman with us. Picked him up this morning from his home in the rain, and please welcome Sir Doug Ellis, OBE. You could have the biggest seat today.
I'll need one.
Okay. OBE 2005, Sir Doug, and New Year's Honours list. You must be really, really proud.
Well, firstly, are there any Aston Villa supporters here?
Yeah. Yay!
Don't desert us. We'll not go down. But it was a disastrous night last night. I'm sure all of you will agree. Nevertheless, I've been asked to speak to the college. I have to admit that I wasn't aware of this college, but I'm so impressed, having spent some time with Neil, previous speaker, in his office. And the one thing that did impress me, had a big slogan saying, "No dream is too big." And I think that applies to me in many respects, because I wasn't academic. As I understand, the majority of the students are not necessarily academic, probably failed academically, but now successful in all the technicalities of the service that this college provides. So I'm very impressed with South Birmingham College, and I can only thank all of you who are coming here to support this particular college. But I was asked to talk about my life, and that slogan, no deal is too big, applies, because I wasn't born with a silver spoon. My father died when I was 3 years of age, living in the Wirral Peninsula, but my dream was to be a professional footballer. So, apart from going to a day school in Chester, I went to a night school in Ellesmere Port, which was famous because the headmaster was Billy Roberts, who was the chairman of the English Schools Football Association, which was a new founded organisation in what was the year? Anyhow, I was 14 years of age at the time, and my only income was 6 shillings a week for delivering milk before I caught the 8:25 train to Chester for school. And what do you think of it, ladies and gentlemen? 6 shillings a week is 30 pence today. For that, I had to get up at 6:30 in the morning, milk a couple of cows, and deliver the milk around the village, which I did. So that's where I came from.
And you had a really tough upbringing, really, Sir Doug.
Yes.
You lost your father when you were just 3, your sister was something like 2 months old.
My mother had a very hard time. I worshipped her. She never remarried after her father died, following being gassed with mustard gas in the First World War. He was in the trenches, and he couldn't fight pneumonia and pleurisy because of the lungs being infected with this gas. So she had a hard job. My sister was 8 weeks old and no money, and she did everything to enable her 2 children to go to a decent school, and from then onwards I've endeavoured to look after her. When I had enough money, I brought her to Birmingham, where I arrived in the 5th of April 1948. And the reason I came to Birmingham was this. During my 4 years and 4 months in the Royal Navy during the war, I used to see the lads coming aboard ship, having been ashore, places like Gibraltar and Malta and Alexandria, Bombay, Rangoon, from usually seeking with tattoos and talking about bringing their wives and their girlfriends back to these places they'd just been to. And I used to think they were stupid. They needed someone to organise it. So from that day onwards, I made up my mind to start a travel company to take these people. I thought that if they lived in Birmingham, they'd have to get out of the place at least once a year. I learned the travel business in Preston because for the 15 games prior to going foreign, to the Far East, I'd had a few games with Southport Football Club, which always relied upon servicemen, whether they were RAF or Army or Navy, and I got a few games there. And so they kept my registration, what I think even Don Goodman will not be aware of. Servicemen during the war, if the club wished to keep the registration until after the war, they had to pay £1 a day for all the days they were away. So I came back to 1,000 shillings from Southport Football Club, which was a lot of money in those days. And so I came back. I lived in Preston, 100 yards from Tommy Finney, who became my great friend and still is today, although he's in a home, unfortunately. A great player. And for example, a little story about him. One day I came home from my office at Frames Tours in Fishergate, and my wife, Audrey, said, "You'd never believe who was on our roof today." I said, "Who?" She says, "Tommy Finney." Now, we were in a 4-floor flat at the top, and I'd said to Tommy, he asked me a question, "How's the flat?" I said, "It's okay, but it's leaking. There's water getting through." And without saying anything else, he'd come along when I wasn't there, gone on the roof, repaired the roof, and I remember telling an audience at Manchester City's ground when we were doing a charity for a famous player, and Tom Finney had repaired my roof, and I said to this audience, and I was still waiting for his bill, which amused Gordon Taylor.
And of course, Birmingham City were part of your early days, Sir Doug, as well.
Yes, when I came to Birmingham on the 5th of April, '48, Joe Mercer had moved from Everton, I think, and was there. So he went to the same school as me, same as Stan Cullis. Stan went to Wolves, Joe went to Everton, and Billy Roberts, the headmaster, sent me to Tranmere. But I never really made it, so that slogan leaps up in front of me, "No dream is too big." So,
and of course you took over Villa in 1968.
That's right, yeah. Well, the reason I didn't take over Villa earlier was that I had a blackball put in by one of the old Villa directors. And so a man named Len Morris, he was a director, Birmingham City, came to see me and asked me to do exactly the same for them. And I said, "No, I'm a Villa man." But he said, "Well, come and have lunch with us," with he and his brother, Harry, who was chairman of Birmingham City. And I succumbed to spend 3.5 years at Birmingham City. More often than not, training the youngsters. But by and large, it was a mistake, and yet it was a good thing because I learned how not to run a football club. Because all the directors were at each other's throats. You have to have a happy boardroom. So I moved back to 1968 and took over the club when it was bankrupt. And I loaned the club £100,000 to keep the bank manager off our backs. And from there said publicly, "We haven't enough money to buy players, we'll just have to breed them. But I'll put £10,000 in, more than any other firm, just on breeding youngsters." And the final result was when we won the European Cup in Rotterdam, which I failed to be there because of the strike at London Airport. We had 7 youngsters from our academy, which I'd formed, in the squad. They didn't all play, but they were from the original squad. And I was proud of our academy. The FA then asked me to be chairman of the new academy system for the FA, and we started with one club, which was Aston Villa. And I had 38 clubs, all putting $2 million a year into the production of youth, which has turned out to be very good. Sorry, I moved on.
No, it's fascinating, Mr. Duggan. You had quite a few managers while you were in charge of Villa, of course. I think it was like 13. And you picked up the nickname at some stage of Deadly Doug, which means something else, I presume, which we spoke about this morning.
Yeah.
Deadly Doug Ellis.
Yes. I did have 13 managers, but I only sacked 11. One walked away, that was Ron Saunders. He was a good manager, but he walked away to Birmingham City. And the other was Graham Taylor, who asked me could he manage England, which of course I couldn't refuse him on that. Tommy Doherty was my first manager, and he was a very good man for Aston Villa. We had 11,000 crowds when Tommy arrived. And when he left, we'd had a crowd of 53,000. And he was a great man to just turn us round. But after that, I had people like Ron Saunders, Ron Atkinson. He was a good man in his time. He couldn't believe that I could sack him.
And some interesting stories we talked about over the last few weeks about Paul Gascoigne springs to mind, Sir Doug?
Yes,
nearly signed him.
I signed Paul Gascoigne in the Hilton Hotel in Rome. Just at the time I was signing him, his mentor, who was called Three Bellies, who was with him, he said, "Paul, you promised Walter Smith that you wouldn't sign anything before you talked to him." And I said, "What? How didn't you tell me that 2 hours ago when we'd been negotiating his salary, signing on fee?" The result is that he kept his promise to Walter Smith, and I lost Paul Gascoigne. But he was a great player.
And of course, you mentioned this morning about how you've made your first £1 million, your first £1 million.
Yes. As I say, in my Navy days, wherever we were in the country, the players, the staff, the matlows would go ashore, come aboard with tattoos, talking about bringing their wives and their girlfriends. And I thought they couldn't organise anything. So I made it my business to learn the travel business. I did that in Preston, close to Southport, because I really came back to Southport, and I was with Southport for a month in 1946 when we mutually agreed that my injuries to my left leg were made it impossible for me to continue as a player. Looking back, I probably wasn't good enough anyhow. So the slogan comes up again. No dream is too big. So instead of being a player, I bought a football club called Aston Villa for £100,000 initially, and £10,000 to provide youngsters with the opportunity of becoming professional footballers.
Fantastic. And obviously charity work and support has been a big part of your life over the last 30 years, particularly, Sir Doug, as well. Linked to your first travel company, I think you helped nurses to get to northern India.
Yes, what happened was that a lady came to see me at my office before Aston Villa to say she was the organiser of the British Commonwealth Society for the Blind. And she said they supplied money to provide 2 doctors and 4 nurses every year to go to northern India to put a camp to take cataracts off young children. And some mothers would bring them 100 miles to this camp every year, the result of which was I used to give free holidays travelling on my Dakota to start with from Birmingham to, say, Palma, Mallorca, for a fortnight in one of the hotels. I had 5 hotels eventually in Spain, 3 of them were in Mallorca. And they'd have this holiday as a raffle prize to enable the Royal Commonwealth Society of the Blind to continue doing this job every year, removing cataracts under canvas. And I was very impressed with that. That started me off in charity for children. And eventually, about 20 or more years ago, I supported the NSPCC, which I thought was a good charity for children, and I still support them today. And in the interim period, a few years ago, Esther Ransom was almost broken, so NSPC took her over. So then I was very impressed with Esther, and I helped her to supply staff. For example, she said to me one day, "I'll introduce you to one of the volunteers. This is the 146 Hagley Road in Birmingham, where the NSP's headquarters are." And this man she introduced me to said he was a schoolmaster, and I asked him a simple question: "How long are you on the telephone with these distressed kids?" He said, "An average of three or 4 minutes." He said, "But there was one occasion a couple of years back when a volunteer said to me that he was usually on the telephone for 5 minutes, but on one occasion a few years ago he was on the telephone with a youngster standing on the parapet of a bridge over the M5 who was committing suicide, and he wanted to ask someone to talk to his mother and father as to why, the schoolmaster, his pals, and he went on for an hour and 10 minutes. The system they have is when there's a serious call, the person taking the call has put his hands up, and the supervisor would then link in another member of the staff to listen into the conversation. So this member of the staff listened in, and he called Stourbridge Police Station, and a policeman went out onto the bridge, and the conversation became three-way: the policeman, the boy, this particular volunteer. And after an hour and 10 minutes, they talked the boy down, boy of 13. And I said, "Was it a cry for help?" He said, "Oh, we know the difference. This was serious." So I felt it was a good thing that this boy's life was saved by Esther Ransom's employee.
Fantastic. And another amazing story I heard about the tsunami in 2004, when you boats come to mention, Sir, Claret and Blue.
Yes, yes. Having been in the Far East for 2.5 years, and listening to the Tamil members of I had 60 local employees. I started a transport division of the Fleet Air Arm in Colombo, and there was 60, there was about 40 Sinhalese and 20 Tamils. And I felt sorry for the Tamils because they were ill-treated by the Sinhalese, and I was often at a Tamilese home, more like a tent in the jungle, because they'd asked me to go and see their wife who just miscarried or this or that or the other, and I was very sorry. But when the tsunami took place, I thought of Ceylon to start with, then I thought of the Tamils, who were based mainly in northern part of India, and so I thought, how can I help them? So with the tsunami, I organized, he was a Sikh, but he did our televisions. We have 250 televisions in Villa Park, and he looked after them. I can't think of his name. And he was the chairman of Aston Rotary Club. So he went out to Madras, that's where it was, where the Tamils originate from, to Madras, thinking that it was a follow-up for the Ethiopian crisis, which I supported years earlier, because we saw on television that kids in Ethiopia are suffering. And I sent out, together with Lou Peter, I chartered an aircraft from Amsterdam for £40,000, and it went to Ethiopia with food and medicine that I begged from Boots and from Aston, from all the different companies, 20 ton of it. And I put Blue Peter on board the aircraft so that they would make sure that the army didn't grab the food and medicine. It went up, they come up to the north of the country, and Blue Peter followed them. So that, going back now to the tsunami, the chairman of the Aston Rotary Club, their livelihood is fishing, and the boats are now half a mile inland because of the tsunami. So he said, we've negotiated the purchase of 42 boats, 28 for one village and 14 for another village. Would you agree that the £106,000 I'd raised at Aston Villa for that tsunami deal goes in boats rather than food? I said, by all means. As one condition, make all the boats painted in claret and blue. And every boat had to have the name of one of our players on it, with the exclusion of one, which would have my wife, my second wife, Heidi's name. We've been married for 49 years, still in the same house, by the way. And for the youngsters that come and join Aston Villa, I always tell them to buy houses in the north of Birmingham, in Sutton, Caulfield or Four Oaks. And if they don't wish to buy, they only want to rent, take an option to buy in 12 months' time. And so many of them have made fortunes. I won't mention the various players that I could speak of, but it's a good area.
And of course, 2004, 2004, you had the shock that you'd got prostate cancer?
Yes, I had prostate cancer with a malignant tumour, which I beat at the Queen Elizabeth in 20 days, and subsequently a non-malignant tumour in the bowels, which was operated through the backside, and then a triple bypass, the heart. So at that particular stage, I'll never forget it, because a friend of mine came to see me in ITU at the Priory Hospital, and he said, Aston Villa's put you in here. And it would be right. He said, why don't you give it up and enjoy your retirement? He had with him a friend who I didn't know, turned out to be a journalist. The following day in the Birmingham Mail, it says, Doug will sell. So I was inundated with people who wanted to buy Aston Villa. 5 eventually were sorted out. So I employed Rothschilds, the bankers, to sort them out. And 4 of the 5 were borrowing money to buy Aston Villa, and I didn't want that because I'd kept the villa stable with no debts. And I had the experience of chairing a committee at the FA on which I had Martin Edwards and David Gill on that committee, and they kept telling me how much money they had to pay to the Glazers every year for the interest on the borrowing that they had made. And the last year was £60 million, just in interest on 716 million borrowing, which works out at 8%. And I swore blind I'd never hand the club over to someone who had put the club in debt to any extent at all. So when Rothschilds told me that 4 of them, including people like George Gillette, who I liked very much, he bought Liverpool afterwards. The Chinaman bought Birmingham City. He was another one who wanted it. An Armenian from South America, he wanted it. But Rothschilds charged me £1 million just for the advice, by the way.
We don't charge that much here, by the way.
So eventually, our friend, the present owner of Aston Villa, came the 3rd time, and he offered me 65 million, and I said, "You're sorry, I've reduced the value from 115 million. I've had it valued very professionally and independently at 115. I've reduced it to 85 to be sure that it was cash and not borrowing." And so he offered me 65. I said, "You'll lose it, Randy. Sorry, it's 85. All the others want to give me 85. Sorry." And he said, "Well, I don't need to do much due diligence on you, because when I was a student at Oxford, I was there for 2 years and I supported 2 clubs. Arsenal and Aston Villa. And you were always known as a mean bastard. So I won't have to do much due diligence, but a shake of a hand, no paperwork. I'll buy it. 1 month from today, I'll put 65 million in your account. And I said, come on, we'll have lunch in the little restaurant we had there, open every day. And he talked about his mom and his dad, how his dad had borrowed £500,000 from a small banker to build MBNA, which was a credit card company. And he sold it for 35 billion. But Randy only had 10% of that. It nevertheless was $3.5 billion. I thought, that'll do. And so, to cut a long story short, the shake of a hand. But in fact, the first 20 million of the 85 million was really my money. And that bought players for Martin O'Neill in the first year, which was my condition. But he's kept his word on everything else. He's a good man, doesn't come to many matches. It leaves me to look after the visitors.
As life president, obviously you're life president there as well, so don't you?
That's right, he made me life president for life, so I've got all the same facilities at Aston Villa, which is my second home, my club. But I don't have the financial worries. He's got that. And that was the basic reason which I won't disclose as to why Martin left us. Martin left us.
And just looking back at your life, Sir Doug, as well, we talked about dreams with Mike this morning as well. Did you, as a young lad, did you have a dream of achieving things like you've achieved?
Oh yeah. Well, my father was a professional with Tranmere Rovers. As I said, he died when I was 3. So when I went to Tranmere through the introduction of Billy Roberts, the headmaster of the school in Ellesmere Port called the Grange, the kit man said, "You're Herbie Ellis's son." He said, "Next time," we used to do Tuesdays and Thursdays there, "I'll show you a photograph of your father." And he brought me one of these bromide photographs of my father playing for Aston in the team. So I was proud of that. But I only played for the Colts in a few reserve games because I was only 14, 15, 16, and 17 I joined the Navy. But I was lucky enough to be on a trial at Fratton Park, Portsmouth, for Navy East versus Navy West, Plymouth ratings versus Pompey ratings. And I had a reasonably good game. And who was watching was a fellow called Jimmy Dickinson, a famous man from Portsmouth, and said, who have you played for? And I said, only Tranmere. He said, would you like to train with us? I said, I'd love to, but can you get me off duty on Leon Solent, where I was trying to be a pilot? And he said, we've some influence around here. They got me off duty. Probably saved my life because the Fleet Air Arms pilots, 50% were killed, a very large number. And so I got out and probably saved my life playing football. But I wasn't good enough. Not like Don Goodman, who's sort of
Malcolm Page.
Page is right here with us.
Yeah, Des Brenner's here as well, of course, today. Friend Des Brenner from your days. And if you had to give somebody, a young person, advice today, Sir Doug, in terms of what they want to achieve in their life, and think to business people in the room today, what would you give these business people advice in terms of working with youngsters to make a difference?
Well, I'd say there's no substitute for hard work. And you remember a phrase that I was given, an article well bought is half sold. But that comprises everything really in life. Buy your house right, buy your car right, buy your clothes right, and you've always got money in the bank. So that'd be one other piece of advice.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you please thank Sir Doug Ellis.